Hello Internet, and welcome to this video where I take a look at one of my favorite Viking raids, more specifically the raid at the Mediterranean and Luna, as performed by two of the most famous Vikings in the latter part of the 9th century. So yeah, enjoy! After the death of Ragnar Lothbrok, one of his best friends and chief lieutenants, a Viking known as Hasstein, who had spent most of his career raiding northern France, joined up with one of Ragnar's sons, Bjorn the Ironside, and gathering a fleet of about 62 ships, sailed from the French Loire area to raid the countries of the Mediterranean. At a standard about 40 men per ships, 62 ships would have left them with a fleet of about 2,500 raiders, which perhaps seems a bit much or a bit too little depending on the situation, but it probably matches up with what they were about to do. At first, however, the raiding did not go super well. An attempt to land in northern Spain was defeated by the Asturians, and a bit further down the Spanish coastline, the Muslims of the Umayyad Caliphate of Cordoba managed to push the Viking raiders back around early 859. However, success followed further along the Mediterranean coast when the Vikings sacked Algeciras and burned the local mosque, then ravaging the entire area at the Adrisid Caliphate on the north coast of Africa, followed further again by raids into the Umayyad Caliphate at the Balearic Islands and at Roussillon in southern modern-day France. The Vikings wintered at Camargue Island at the mouth of the Rhône River before spending most of 860 ravaging Narbonne and Nîmes and Arles, and even as far north into the southern French countryside as Valence, gathering great booty and doing as much plundering as possible before moving on to Italy, because that was sort of the whole point. They had heard about the eternal city of Rome and decided that, hey, why not sack Rome? That would be a thing to tell story about. And eventually they reached the city of Luna, which was so great and looked so rich that they believed it to be Rome. So they decided to conquer that and started besieging it for a while. The siege went a bit slowly, so Hasstein had his men carry him up to the gates of the city and tell the guards that he was dying, possibly already dead, and that his last wish was to convert to Christianity. Now, the men of Luna could, of course, not let such an impassioned plea sit still, so they let the unarmed men of his mourning crew inside and took the bier on which he was lain to the town church, where he received the sacraments. At this point, Hasstein, who was of course neither dead nor particularly willing to convert, jumped off his bier, took swords from under his sacrificial robes, and basically started killing every person in sight, and leading his men to open the gates, let in the rest of the Vikings under Bjorn, and perform a very, very efficient sack of the city before they then decided to sail away again. Now, later Christian scholars have said that since they wanted to plunder Rome, this was to a certain degree a defeat for the Vikings, and I'm sure that that was a relief for the about 20% surviving citizens of Luna who had seen their wives and daughters raped, their sons and husbands murdered, possibly raped, and everything that wasn't bolted down and looked even the slightest bit, valuable taken onto the Viking ships. I'm sure they were very, very happy that it had been them and not Rome that had been, put through this particular experience. Hooray! Following the sack of Luna, the Viking fleet continued down the coast and also sacked Pisa and sailing up the river Arno to ravage the Fiesole possibly even raiding Byzantine Empire sites in the eastern Mediterranean the next year. On the way back to the Loire area, they also stopped in North Africa to buy several African slaves from the local Muslim rulers, known to the Vikings as the Blue Men. So possibly West Africans, mainly because Vikings didn't really have the color black for skin color. That was blue, so blue men was basically black men. These were later sold in Ireland and introduced thus a bit of, we was kangs into the Irish bloodlines. Homeward bound, Haystein and Bjorn was then engaged and scattered by a powerful Muslim fleet just outside the Strait of Gibraltar, but still managed to get together again to ravage and plunder Pamplona, before, after 3 years, returning to the Loire area with 20 of the original 62 ships, utterly loaded with booty and with stories to tell. Certain scholars have claimed that possibly some of the stories about the fall of Luna is just that, stories. They find it unlikely that the burghers would have opened the town gates just because someone came up and claimed that their leader was feeling a bit under the weather and wanted to become a Christian. But the sack is of little doubt. In fact, the whole raid is of very, very little doubt. What's important about it is that there might have been Vikings in the Mediterranean before this, and there certainly were Vikings in the Mediterranean later, if nothing else than during the Varangian Guard period. But this was sort of the first real raid that went outside the France and British areas and showed that the Vikings was in fact a long distance power with a striking arm that went very, very, very far. And like I said, while some has called it a Viking defeat because they only managed Luna and not to actually plunder Rome, I am pretty certain that as I mentioned, the people of Luna would perhaps disagree with that particular assessment. Well, that was it. I hope you enjoyed this particular little story about Viking raids and rape, pillage, and plunder and burning. Just always, as the Vikings said, remember to do that in the right order. It's so very sad to get to the raping when the killing and the burning has already, been done. Well, next time, I don't know what I'm going to talk about next time, but tune in next week if you're interested in more history, because it will definitely be that. And until next time, I have been the Sage, and I wish you all a very happy day.